for a Judicial Service Commission reform, which he says will depoliticize the process. Monique Mortlock, Cape Town.
Now, a recent report suggests that government implement regulatory changes to allow public-private partnerships to accelerate infrastructure growth. The Centre for Development and Enterprise released the report titled Accelerating South Africa's Infrastructure Programme. It says government must focus on getting 4 to 5 projects off the ground. The report comes just days before the State of the Nation address on Thursday. And Bernstein, Executive Director at the Centre for Development and Enterprise, joins us to discuss this report further. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Ms. Bernstein. Let's just talk about infrastructure development in the country over the past 5-6 years. Have we made any progress, if any?
Well, since Cyril Ramaphosa became president, he has said that infrastructure should drive economic growth. It should be one of the key pillars to get growth going and to get employment higher. Unfortunately, in a workshop we had at the end of last year with the leading people in government working on infrastructure and the key financiers in the private sector, it's clear that no significant government-led infrastructure project has broken ground in this country since 2018. That's quite a shocking finding, really, and I was surprised. And I think that that's the reality that we face. So there are hundreds of projects are talked about, 50 are being focused on, but according to the most senior person in the presidency working on infrastructure, Dr. Ramaphosa, he says these projects will still take a long time. Now, the private sector is willing to invest and to get involved in infrastructure activities and financing, but there are no projects coming to market.
Ms. Bernstein, you know, leaders like our president, as you've stated, are always talking about this development that needs to take place, in particular smart cities. Do we even have one in this country?
Well, I'm opposed to the idea of smart cities in South Africa. I think we should be worrying and focusing on the existing metropolitan areas and making sure that we make them efficient and cities of hope for everybody. I think smart cities is a really bad distraction, and I'm not sure who's advising the president on that issue.
Now, when it comes to Ramaphosa and his government in particular, Ms. Bernstein, they're accused of very little, sometimes no action. Would you agree, especially with this particular issue?
Absolutely. I think that we have to change the regulations in order to facilitate public-private partnerships, and that hasn't happened yet. There is work being done, but why it can't be fast-tracked is beyond me. So that's a critical component of what needs to happen. Another critical component is that unless we get the rule of law and law and order sorted out in South Africa, it's going to be very hard to encourage investors to risk other people's money. So we need to start protecting the infrastructure we have much more efficiently. You think about the roads to Richards Bay, for example, not to mention any others, and we have to stop allowing what are called construction mafias, essentially criminals who try and extort favors and jobs and money from construction companies or to operate. This is confused with community development when in fact it's nothing like that. These are criminals, and we need to fix our policing and our prosecution so that we can deal with criminals, so that entire communities and the country as a whole can start to benefit. So if you think about rail, if you're thinking about ports, if you're thinking about almost any area of infrastructure, roads, there are big decisions that have to be made and then implemented with speed and urgency. So if we just change some policies, you could get a lot of private sector investment, but we don't do that, and we don't do it quickly enough.
Ms. Bernstein, I wanted to actually continue on the notion of these construction mafias and corruption in particular when it comes to development. Just how much of it is a hindrance, and are we able to quantify it?
Well, both leaders from the private sector and Dr. Ramaphosa and other government officials mentioned this at our workshop as a big obstacle. I think government is confused on this issue. On the one hand, they want local communities to participate in big projects and to benefit from them, and they keep adding more and more objectives to, let's say, building a road or building a bridge or sorting out the rails. What we have to do in South Africa is to reinstate the rule of law and to stop the lawlessness that permeates our society. You will recall, of course, as the report earlier this week pointed out, we have not apprehended any of the key organizers of the July violence and enormous destruction of infrastructure and property in this country. We have armed insurrectionaries allowed to go free in South Africa, and until we deal with that at a national and a local level, we're going to struggle to be a competitive place for investment. So the rule of law and dealing with criminals who pose as though they represent communities when often they represent nobody other than themselves has to be sorted out.
Lastly, Ms. Bernstein, what do you want to hear at the State of the Nation address on Thursday?
Well, I think we're all getting tired of all the talk. I think we need a very honest diagnosis of why South Africa is in such a terrible state, and that has to start with a weak and corrupt state. And we have to look at all the parts of our society and government that are not working. I'm tired of hearing about how we're going to fix the state-owned companies instead of pouring money down that black hole. So I'm really interested in actions, in bold decisions that show we're going to do things differently. I'm looking for the president to stop the slide in South Africa and to show that he is really concerned about the national interest and not about keeping his party united.
Thank you so much for your time this evening, Ms. Bernstein, as well as your insights. That was the Center for Development and Enterprise Executive Director, Anne Bernstein. Now on to this story now, another incident involving the embattled blue